Hi everybody, Adam here. Welcome back to our Lego room. Exciting milestone today. We're going to try to run some trains around a makeshift version of what our under table layout could be. Want to basically kind of go through the exercise of getting things hooked up as best I can with the parts I have right now, see what other parts I might want to order, see, what things I might want to modify or change up before we get everything mounted onto mills plates. So hoping to learn a lot. We've already learned a fair bit just in the initial hookup here. It's going to be a little kludgy. There are a few parts that we definitely need to pick up. Like I said, things aren't mounted on mills yet, but really hoping that we can both have some fun running trains here and learn some additional things to get the under table layout moving to the next stage. So we're going to start off in the winter village portion of the under table layout. This should be some of the simplest parts of the test. Nothing too much has changed here. But we're going to run the train first around the inner loop, make sure everything's looking good there. Then we will move it to the outer loop, run it around there. Everything should be good, at which point we can then try exiting the winter village loop and head out to the main line where things will probably get more exciting and we'll see how things are working at that point. Making its way around, everything looking good. Didn't expect anything odd here, but a nice aspect of running this test today. It's forced me to do some cleanup and push things out and away to make sure all the track is exposed, make sure I can get to all the different parts of the track. So a nice forcing function and just good to make sure everything is working over here. Okay, so now, like I said, running the test on the outer loop. Looking like everything is working well, which is nice to see. So like I said, didn't expect too much on this part. The big thing I want to do over here, first off, as we move towards getting the layout sort of properly set up, I've been putting together all of the mills modules for the track here. Need to finish that up and basically just move track bits that are here away and store them so that we can also start to open up space for the rest of the winter village part of the layout here, the actual buildings and everything that are going to move down into the main middle part of the loop here. And there'll probably be a few around the edges as well, because we've got a little bit of space in some of the corners that we should be able to come up with some nice corner modules there as well. So now the next thing that we're going to look to do is change that switch over there so that the train will exit out. Now, I'm gonna have to do a bit of work as we move towards the more sort of final form of this layout. There's some interesting things that happen because we've got the full T-junction over on that corner over there. So it has two tracks that are coming out of there, but with the T-junction light that we normally have here on mills modules, there's only going to be the ability for one of those to enter into the, to come around the corner here. One of them will come around fine. The other one will just end up going straight because there's not a second switch on the T-junction light. It's also a little weird of like, okay, so where does that second bit of track go? Because there's only one set of track coming out of the winter village. I could end up getting another T-junction here, which lets both the outer and inner main line make the corner and come down here. That's probably what I need to do. There's probably not another good way around that. That still leaves the problem over here of how are we resolving 2 tracks and 1 track there? Not entirely sure yet. I could see maybe doing something where it was we could do like half a T-junction over here. So you can imagine the ability for both of the loops here to have a way to exit out to the main line. Could be kind of cool. I think it would be nice to have the ability to move from one loop here to the other one, so back and forth, so that trains aren't just completely restricted to one of the loops that they're on. So maybe that's the answer. Maybe we get a second, or I guess a third full T-junction to go in that portion right there. And then we kind of Frankenstein, we take another T-junction and kind of half use it here, because you wouldn't want it to be a full one, I don't think. Maybe you do. Maybe you could make a T-junction work there. Maybe we can look at some different ways to change up what the track geometry looks like in that particular area. But that's what I'm considering there anyways. So for now, we're going to have only the outer loop coming out onto the main line here. It'll bring us onto this track right here. And when we go around the main part of the layout that you'll see more of in a moment, there'll only be 1 track that can do a continuous loop. So we're going to come from that corner over there back down here onto this inner mainline part. And so for the test, we're only going to have that one be loopable. So let's see how it does. If you've got thoughts on what I can do in sort of this area and this area over here, let me know. Like I said, kind of leaning towards at least 1 more T-junction. Probably the best option for over here. And we would take our T-junction light then and probably have it as more of a module that we have in storage for use at shows, or in other sort of temporary layout situations where we set things up. But something that I need to think about some more and work on getting sorted out so that we can make this area as optimal as possible. So I've set the switch appropriately over there. So the train cars, or the locomotive, is going to leave the loop here and come out onto the main line, which, let's see, what do we got going on over here? So we were set correctly. So we want it to come around the corner there. It's going to come out down here. Like I said, things are a little makeshift at the moment. You're going to see track that has ballast, some that doesn't. But we're going to come along here and head towards the bridge area. So we've got 2 bridges set up currently. All the other ones can go in, but they just don't need to at the moment. So let's run and see if we can get that far. So we'll test the distance here on the powered up. So we're coming out, taking the turn, coming down here. Let's just stop for a moment. So here we are coming into the lift out bridge area. Like I said, we've only got the 2 in currently because of the way the track has come together for this particular test, but all 6 work. And I still would like to add probably 1 more module on either side there, just to fill it out, give the full basically 8 bridges across. Currently, you can see we're using these outer ones here. So we go into our R120 and 104 corners there, and we head over towards the monster crossovers over there. Like I said, I would like to move those 2 mainline tracks so that 1 is on the far monster crossover and 1 is on the closer monster crossover. That would ideally put us in a place where the two mainline corners here are passing through this middle bridge module. Can we make that happen? Not entirely sure. We're going to have to see how things play out. I do still really want to make sure that the two smaller radius curves here work and have space and can fit in nicely. Ideally, depending on what we do down at this end over here with the T-junctions we were talking about, ideally there would be space over here to have another set of smaller radius curves like that, which would let us have trains that were smaller and could handle those curves, basically running loops on an inner track, which I think would be fun. That would let us theoretically, depending on how all this works out, we could have at least 4 trains running on the main line at once, because you could have the 4 radius loops, and then you could have your 2 trains running in the winter village. So then you're up to 6 trains running at once in this part of the layout, which would be awesome. Really, really cool. Not entirely sure if we can pull that off yet. We'll just have to see how shape-wise everything works. I mean, theoretically, at this end over here, we could add in, if we needed, some more plywood and 2x4s there, just to give enough space for those smaller radius curves if they don't have it by default. So things to figure out there, but that's kind of where my head is at and what I'm thinking. We will see the locomotive really shouldn't have any trouble getting through this bridge section here. I'm expecting this will be pretty straightforward. The only challenge that we're going to have once we get through the bridge, we're going to want to stop before we get to the crossover over there, just to make sure that we move on to the correct track so that we are on the inner loop, and then the train should be able to just keep looping around that inner part of the layout, at which point we'll have some confidence that, things as they stand right now work. And then it'll be the next phase of starting to revamp stuff to make the modifications that we've talked about. We'll talk more about some of that as we get to the other side, but let's fire up the train now and see how it moves through the bridge here. So here we come. Through the bridge and off into the R120 corner. We'll stop it there so I can move to the other side, and then we'll watch it go through the monster crossover. Okay, I've fiddled with the switches here, so we should come in nicely and switch over. So let's try. We want to switch over basically to that interior main line. Perfect. Really happy with that. So now, if we carefully move around here so we can see down to this end, now we should enter the T-junction there and make our way around, and then continue to loop basically on this inner track loop on the main line. So now we're on the interior part of the layout here as I perform small feats of gymnastics to move between all the different areas. But it is a lot easier with some of the cleanup that I've done. But now if we fire this up, we're going to come down into the T-junction here. We're going to carry around. Good. Now if I just move carefully here, we can see it head towards this, which should take it back around on the interior part of the main line. And then we're through that. So we'll watch it do some loops in just a moment here. But you can see from the view over here, I've basically had to pull this T-junction in a little bit. It's a bit farther forward than I probably would ideally have it, because I think I want it to go basically right to the back of that section there. And then you can see as it comes through here, things get a little squirrely, right? With how is it going to interface with whatever sits here, and then with whatever sits on the edge of the Winter Village loops there. So that's where like a T-junction here, full-fledged T-junction, solves one of the problems, makes this part work okay, and then it kind of pushes the problem over to just that section right there, which honestly we could just run with the one exit point from there. But I think if we can get kind of a modified T-junction working over there, it would be cool. So like I said, if you've got thoughts, let me know. I'm going to do I'll probably pick up at least one more T-junction initially for this part here. And then we'll kind of see what to do for that other area there. But happy that we've made it this far. Really cool to see the train making its first loop through this new part of the layout here. And let's now move back, and we can see the train basically running sort of infinite loops on the inner mainline track before we talk about some of the other next steps. Let's see if we can start it up from down here. Moving through the bridge, okay. So at which point now we should be pretty good, because it should all be basically track that we have tested. Assuming there's no oddities as it goes through the... Oh, and there we go. There is one switch I've got to flip on the monster crossover. So if we run now, so now we should be good. Should start doing loops. So it looks like we're doing successfully over the bridges. Into the corner, around the corner, and then back down through the monster crossover. So really happy with that. That worked out pretty smoothly. And like I said, this was an exercise in, sort of proving things out and seeing not only what sort of additional track I might need, but if there were any gotchas or things I needed to think about and revise in the way the track was coming together, and definitely seen a few of those. Like I said, ideally I want to get the main line on the outer of this first monster crossover, and then on the inner chunk of the other monster crossover. That way it gives us sort of maximum flexibility. We can have a number of sidings down this backstretch here on the lower layout, and have a number of trains on sidings here, just, on display when they're not being actively used, which would be really nice. Like I said, though, it would be really cool if we can get those smaller radius curves down at that end too. Having 4 trains moving, quite cleanly and smoothly around this lower chunk of the layout would be awesome. In addition to obviously the 2 that can be running at any given time on the Winter Village loop over there. 6 trains running down here would be amazing. At our peak, we can only really do 2 on the top layout, the main tabletop layout, and then obviously 2 trains running at a time on the ceiling layout. So, starts to get to some pretty interesting territory there. That's 10 trains that you could theoretically have running at one moment around all the tracks in the room here. Would be pretty impressive and awesome to see. So that'll be the goal that we shoot for. I'm going to make get some orders going for Tricks Bricks for a few bits of track. Feeling pretty good about what we've got in terms of our straight track, but I'm also going to pick up some additional smaller form factor straight track, just for ease of use as we move through some of these areas, to make everything line up. Sometimes we can't use the double length track. We need either the single length or other variations on that. So some work ahead as I get those orders going and start moving things forward to make some of those changes we talked about today. The next big thing beyond that is to really start getting things onto Mills modules. We've been doing a good job of getting Mills modules created. There are some more parts that I need to order in terms of plates for tops of Mills modules. We're going to need some ballast parts in greater quantities. So those are some of the things that we will be ordering and getting prepared. And you'll see a number of those things start to come in, and videos around a lot of that as we get things moving forward. Like I said, for this particular test here, I had to do a bunch of moving of things around in the Lego room here in general to make it a little easier to get to different parts of the layout. So we'll probably talk about that in an upcoming Lego room tour. But that's the other big thing. Obviously, working on city buildings, train cars, modules for train industries, etc. Lots of builds in general going on, but also doing a lot of organization work in and around those videos and those projects to try to keep everything as accessible and, give myself the biggest opportunity for displaying and showcasing stuff here in the Lego room. So I know this was a long video, longer than some of ours, but we're probably going to have a few of these in the coming weeks as we do some of these bigger projects and try to move stuff forward, experiment with things to see what will work, what won't work. If you guys have not subscribed to the channel, please make sure to do so that you don't miss out on any of those videos. And thank you guys for watching, and thank you to those of you who comment down below with thoughts on alterations I can make to the layout here, things that I should potentially consider or do for those T-junction spots that we're talking about. I appreciate all the feedback and thoughts, and thank you guys very much for watching. We will see you again soon. Take care. Bye.